It is the debut of Trey Lance. We finally got to see some snaps. Both he and Jimmy Garoppolo had 24 snaps against the Seattle Seahawks, and we are going to break down what we saw from Trey Lance in his debut and give you what we thought was going to be, an uneven performance. And it turns out when we broke the hood open, took a look at some things, we'll let you make your own decisions. Let's start at the beginning. Very, very first play. It's a run play. It's the old Colin Kaepernick run. You should be familiar with this run. It works. This is why the quarterback in the run game is such a big deal, and it's because it does so many things to that Seattle defense, and it pops for a 14-yard gain.
Yeah, so we'll really see, again, we'll let it run from the sideline here and kind of get into it where you can really see, I think, more of the movement from the end zone view here. But yeah, so we're going to get to basically just the pistol zone read, right? This is something that the 49ers did a ton, like you mentioned, back in the Colin Kaepernick days. We're going to get this arc block from Juice here, looking to get up to the linebacker. So basically, he's reading the defensive end there, number 94. And you can see that already, so 94 has got to be slow, right? So he's going to stay outside for the quarterback a little bit. So he's slow crashing down, and that makes it so he can't get down to Sermon. And then you can also look at Bobby Wagner, right? So Bobby Wagner is the other one that's going to have a chance to make a play on this. But even then, you can see Juice and the way his block is set up, right? So he's trying to get to the outside of Wagner. So he's trying to seal him in case Lance keeps the ball. So he's not really making this block and being of much help if Sermon gets the give like he does. But you can see that Wagner is flowing over the top, and he gets a little bit too far outside in his gap, and that's enough space there for Sermon to be able to get up through, and that's what kind of creates the big gain there.
It almost looks like Wagner's expecting to exchange the gap with 94 and kind of scrape over, and they kind of screw up the communication. Wagner goes a little too far outside, 94 goes too far inside. And run defense is really an 11-person game. If someone is just outside of their gap and someone doesn't commit to their assignment, well, that's how you end up with a 14-yard run, and that's what the option run game will do to an offense. But the run stuff we knew was going to be there. What we really are concerned about are the passes and what Trey Lance brings in the passing game. And when we look at this first play, this is going to be one of the training camp installs. And in fact, a lot of the plays that we saw Lance run they were just kind of basic install plays that you would expect in the beginning part of training camp. This is going to be a concept that Shanahan calls Blazer. You're going to see two routes here, the two primary routes. One is going to be the over route, which is really the route that should be thrown here. The other is going to be a deep route that widens to the numbers and then breaks back inside. It really is a concept that is a staple of Shanahan. He does a lot of things off of this. It is an early install, and it's a throw that Lance should make and just doesn't pull the trigger.
Yeah, so as we get it back here, now that we've had a chance to look at it a few times, I think really the throw you're looking for him to make is the one to Ayuk, right? So he's kind of, looking down the middle of the field. Both receivers are going to kind of be within his vision here. And so the two things that I think you can really look at are, one, the position of the linebacker, and then two, what the cornerback is doing down there to the bottom of the screen, right? So those are going to be the two players that really have an opportunity to potentially make a play on a throw to Ayuk here. So it could be the corner, right? If the corner wants to essentially fall off of the post, right? So essentially, and I think this is why Debo, and why Shanahan has it set up this way to have Debo run it like this, because by widening first and really going at the corner and then kind of staying pretty vertical still after the break, right? Not going so far to the middle of the field, he really forces that cornerback to kind of commit to it, right? And so you can see the cornerback has to open up. He has to really try to run with this route. So he's no longer going to be a threat to kind of fall off and play this corner, right? So then we look at the linebacker, who the linebacker predictably gets pulled up a little bit by the play action here. Now he does a good job of kind of opening up, and he knows that he's kind of got to get on his horse here and turn and run to get this. But there's a lot of space here to throw this. And also the backer has his back to the ball, right? He's not going to be trailing the play this much at this stage. Like, he's not going to turn around and be looking for this ball. So there's really little danger here in terms of like throwing a potential interception or something like that. And he has all of this space. If he gets enough air under it, right, and really puts it over the top of the linebacker and gives Ayuk some room to kind of run underneath it, like, it's there. That throw is there. And you can kind of see a little bit from the end zone view here too, right? You can kind of see where his eyes are at. And yeah, he's looking for that route. And this is what I mean when he sees, right, he can see the linebacker here with his back to the ball. And so I think that should be a key for him, really. And I feel like the cornerback is also going to be within his vision here, right? So he's not having to like move around and look at different things. Like, this is all stuff that should be with where he's looking on the field, and he just doesn't like it, and, you know, ultimately decides to try to take off and scramble and try to make something happen out of structure, and ends up getting pushed out of bounds after 3 yards.
You also begin to see a little bit of his skittishness in the pocket here, because he's looking to the left side. He's looking to where that concept is developing, and he feels something, and that block is engaged. I mean, he's not really, he can step up. He still has a little bit of time. Like, that's not really a huge threat, but he feels it, and he just immediately begins to duck and run. Yep. And at this point now, it is outside of structure, scramble drill, but that's a pocket. That's a pocket he doesn't need to bail from. And that's a pocket that if he waits, he should have hit that throw when he gets to the top of his drop, and then he takes one hitch and throws it. It should be out of his hand. But he even then still has time and decides to get skittish and run, and now it's just a jailbreak.
Yeah, and I would also like to see him just run here. Like, he needs to kind of know the concept, right, in that those guys are running way down the field. One of them is running the opposite direction that you just escaped from the pocket here. Like, they're not really going to be options for you, right? Like, they're not going to be able to get back into this play quickly enough for you to be able to kind of find them in most situations. So, like, just take off here. Like, you probably get more than 3 yards if you just commit to running immediately as soon as you get kind of spooked in the pocket there.
So that's some play action. That's some of the longer concepts that we like, that we know Shanahan likes to run. Then we get to the quick game. And this is the third play we got for you. And this concept is dragon, lion, over. The 3 words in there give you the 3 things that are happening on this play. You've got dragon, which is going to be the slant flat. That's going to be to the top of the screen. You've got lion, which is double slants. That's going to be to the bottom of the screen. And then you've got over, which is one of the routes, and it basically just goes over the ball, and that's going to be the third route that you see. And so the dragon and over are going to be to the top of the screen. Lion is going to be to the bottom of the screen. It's a concept that is another real early install, and it's one that the Niners ran a couple of times back-to-back, and this is the first time they ran it.
Right, and so the next kind of few plays here are something that we noticed. This is all from the final drive that they had in this game, and there were a couple situations where it looked like Shanahan was basically, you could tell that he was in his ear kind of between plays here, and they literally go back to the exact same play, and Lance does something different on it, right? So if you look at this, initially he's going to be looking to the left, right? So he's looking at the double slants that he's got down there at the bottom of the screen. Doesn't end up liking it. The corner does a good job there of kind of getting hands on Debo and being in position to take that route away. Kittle's got 2 guys that are right there in traffic, so doesn't really have anything. And in the quick game stuff, it's difficult to be able to really move on too quickly. Like, you would expect him to maybe get back to the over route here, but Bobby Wagner's on that, right? The place to throw it is really, he should be looking to the opposite side of the field when you look at the numbers that we've got, right? So the bottom, we've got 2 wide receiver options there, and there's 3 defenders that are over on that side of the field. Up to the top of the screen, we've only got 2 underneath defenders. You got the corner, and then basically who's going to be like the hook curl player, curl flat player that I can't see who it is, but the one that's kind of aligned on the hash here. Those are the 2 guys that are going to be really involved to the 3 receiver side at the top, right? So you've got the numbers advantage to the top, and you can see that Juice is wide open, right? The flat player doesn't get out there quick enough, like a quick throw there, Juice would be the first read. And he's getting, at least 6-7 yards here on this play. And you've got a positive for your offense, right? But he looks to the wrong direction, gets pressure, has a little miscommunication here with Ayuk, and you end up with nothing on this first down play.
So you see this play. The next play that we're going to show you is the exact same. It's right afterwards.
Yeah, very next play.
It's the very, very next play. And it is a similar formation, similar concept. They get a similar look, but this time you see both the same concepts. It is dragon, lion, over, but this time he goes where he should have gone last time, and that's to Juice in the flat.
Yeah, it is literally the exact same formation and concept here. The only thing that really changes between the two, Seattle's in the same coverage. They're in cover 6 on both of them, but they flip the sides on them there. So on the previous play, the cover 2 side was down at the bottom. This time it's up at the top, but you end up with the same sort of thing from a numbers standpoint, right? I've got basically a triangle of players there on the bottom of the screen. They're over my 2 receivers, and I still only have 2 underneath guys that I need to worry about to the 3 receiver side. And so this time, it's like Shanahan basically was like, hey, you went to the wrong side. We're going to run this exact same play again and throw it this way instead. And so you can see him again. He hits the last step in his drop. Ball is out to Juice. And this is what it really should have happened on the previous play.
This isn't the only time that we see Shanahan go back-to-back, though, in terms of concepts and in terms of plays. He does it again later on in the touchdown drive. And this time he goes back and calls a concept twice that is basically a Dale concept, which is going to have 2 players here aligned tight to the formation that end up kind of check releasing into the flat. And then a cop route, which is a basically corner post route, and basically runs it twice. But the same thing kind of happens where Trey Lance doesn't really process everything the way that he should. So you go back to it, but the next time Lance goes to a slightly different place.
Yeah, so it is another situation where they're going to be in the same formation, running the same concept, and they're going to get the same sort of coverage look from Seattle. And so this time, again, you see Lance looking to his left. And this one, I don't know that it's as clear pre-snap what direction he should be working. He just happens to go to the side that is more covered. So you've got Sherfield there, and you can see at this point, right, the linebacker that's underneath is the player of those underneath defenders that has the most depth right now. So he's in the best position to get underneath this. And then as Sherfield makes his break back to the middle, you can see Jamal Adams there kind of driving on that and really going to be in solid position to make a play on the ball if he does let that go, right? So rightfully kind of sees that that's covered up, doesn't let it go, and then at that point you can see a little bit of pressure there that forces him out of the pocket. And so he ends up, again, you turn this into a positive. McGlinchey gets called for holding here to kind of negate it, but it doesn't really have an impact on anything that Lance is doing here. And so we get to the very next play, and again, you're going to see the same sort of setup here, right? You're going to see the motion that you get from Sanu to get to the same exact alignment. And we're getting the exact same routes again from the bottom from Sherfield. But the previous play, right, Debo was the one that was open. And so now he's like, okay, we're going to run this exact same play again, throw it to Debo on the other side. And he does, but this time the safety is kind of ready for it and drives on it and is able to break it up.
It just basically feels like Shanahan has a limited set of plays, and he's going to run those plays. And when Lance kind of either misprocesses or misreads, he's going to basically say, all right, run it again. And this time he's going to jump in his ear and let him know, okay, this is what maybe you should be looking at. This is where you should be going. And so overall, the passing game, not super strong. But we get to the thing that Trey Lance can do, which is ultimately get to a positive play when maybe there's nothing there because his right tackle gives up another pressure. And this play is another really mirrored concept. This is a double swirl. So you're going to see both of the inside kind of number 2 wide receivers do a very similar type of thing. And this time it's McGlinchey over there giving up a pressure. And this is 4th and 10. If this is Jimmy Garoppolo, this is not going to end well. And instead, Lance is able to extend the drive and end up ultimately scoring a couple of plays later.
Yeah, so he doesn't really have a lot of options, right? So again, 4th and 10, and in terms of what you're looking at from a pass concept standpoint, he doesn't really have much to throw this ball to, right? So I mean, you've got the underneath guys there that, of course, the little check releases into the flat here, but that's not getting you 10 yards, right, on first down. That's where they want you to throw the ball. And everybody else, I mean, you see the 2 outside receivers there, Ayuk and Debo, are on the swirl routes that you mentioned. And so it's basically just kind of a break to the corner, but really come back and hook it up like a curl. And then you've got this sort of intermediate dig route that you get from the slot receiver there. I think it's Sanu. But everything is pretty covered up. I think mostly, like, maybe he could get it to Debo, like with I think a perfect throw, like on time, perfect ball location. But even then, when he needs to be letting it go is probably right about now. And that's when he's starting to get pressure in his face, right? That's when McGlinchey is kind of getting beat there. So I think even if he wanted to throw that, like, it really doesn't set up for him to be able to do it. And so I think as we switch to the end zone view here, you can really get a good look at what he's seen and kind of the things that he's working with in the pocket there. And yeah, I think this is absolutely making something out of nothing, right? I don't think you can really fault him from a process standpoint in any way here, or saying that he should have thrown the ball to X, Y, or Z, but everything else is kind of covered. He gets pressure in his face, right? This is a play that looks like it should be dead, and he's able to create something and get a first down and keep the drive alive for this offense.
If I hadn't have drank so much whiskey in my life, I probably would have dug deep for a Chris Bourbon whoop right there for number 94, because that is, I mean, look at this right here. That cut right there is what ultimately does it. And he ends up getting 10 yards. It is that's the kind of stuff that when we say that Trey Lance is able to extend things, when he's able to use his legs to give him a little bit more time that he may not have and keep the offense on schedule, that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. But if you think back to all the passing game stuff, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't good. He looked skittish in the pocket. He looked hesitant. He looked like an overclocked computer. Too much was happening for him too quickly, it seemed like. And it wasn't until Shanahan really started to repeat concepts and get in his ear that it seemed like he was going to the right spot. And look, McVay had to do that with Goff too. So it's not uncommon that you've got an offensive coach in someone's ear. But I think this is why Shanahan was so adamant about Garoppolo playing and about Garoppolo starting, and why you hear that if Garoppolo is healthy, he will play. I think it's because you always have to worry about whether or not it's too early to play someone like Trey Lance based on the fact that he played in FCS. And I mean, based on this limited number of plays, 24 dropbacks, I mean, Shanahan may be right.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, honestly, I came in expecting to watch this second half from this offense and expected it to be pretty bad just based on what we saw from it during the broadcast, and it was kind of worse than I expected. It really wasn't good. I mean, even we got to the mirrored stuff that they were doing late and running concepts back to back. They were doing this earlier in the half too, like some of these same concepts. I mean, there was one play. That same sort of double slant flat concept. They ran it earlier, and he tried to force the slant in there to Debo and sailed it over his head, and it went right through the corner's hands, and was lucky that wasn't picked off. Even with some of the run plays, right? They were calling those back to back. They started out the very two first plays. We showed the first run play that they had. They went back to the exact same play on the next snap, right? And so they were doing things like that basically through the duration of having him out there, and they were keeping things, I think, very simple, right? Like we're not talking about a lot of complex reads. Like most of the plays that he had were kind of like 1 to 2 to get the fuck out, right? We're basically like his read, right? It was like, okay, I'm going to check deep to short to run, right? Or I've got a basically an intermediate route or my check down that are right there. And so it was keeping things very simple. And even those seemed to be problematic because the timing was off. He wasn't getting to the right side of the concept based on what the coverage was showing in pre-snap. And so, yeah, I think it's difficult, but these were always going to be things that I think were problematic, right? I don't know that we necessarily saw anything in this half of play from him that you wouldn't have expected watching his college tape. Like, the point in having Lance out there is not that he makes you immediately better, right? It's that you need to get through these growing pains at some point. And there is still some upside. I mean, we've seen some of the positive plays and some of the explosive plays that he can create. And you have to think that as he gets more comfortable, they get a little bit more expansive in the run game, that stuff is going to help out. And so, yeah, you're kind of willingly saying that we're going to work with these deficiencies for a little bit for the long-term gain. And that's kind of, I think, why we switched gears this last week on the podcast and basically said that, yeah, I think that Shanahan isn't that type of guy right now. Like, he wants to win now. He wants to win this season. And until this season is no longer offering him that chance, I think we're going to see him stick with Garoppolo, assuming, of course, that Garoppolo can be on the field to begin with.
And you think of how Colin Kaepernick looked when he came in relief of Alex Smith in his first game where he played a couple of, I think it was maybe just even the second half, and he did look great. And then he came in and completely dunked on everyone against the Bears. I'm not saying Trey Lance is going to do that if he starts against the Arizona Cardinals, but it was pretty clear that Shanahan's game plan was not really built or tailored for Trey Lance.
Yep.
And I think if he's given the opportunity to do that, you'll see some different plays, you'll see some different concepts, you'll see more things that Lance is comfortable with, and that will overall make Lance look better. So I don't know if Lance is going to start against the Cardinals, but if he does, I still think it'll be better. And overall, I think it'll still be a valuable experience to make him feel more comfortable because it looked like he was just playing uncomfortably. So that does it for this Patreon breakdown of Trey Lance. Thanks for buying us a beer. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, go Niners.